The Railway Mania of the 1840s, Britain's first great investment bubble. The setting is Britain during the early to mid-19th century, a time marked by rapid industrialization and technological innovation. Politically, this period was characterized by relative stability under the long reign of Queen Victoria, beginning in 1837, which led to the era being named the Victorian era. Britain was emerging as a global superpower driven by its vast empire and booming industrial economy. However, this prosperity was unevenly distributed, with a stark divide between the wealthy elite and the working poor. Economically, the country was experiencing the effects of the Industrial Revolution, which had transformed the manufacturing landscape and fueled urbanization. Factories and mills were springing up, and a new middle class of industrialists and entrepreneurs was rising. However, this rapid economic change also led to challenging working conditions, with long hours, child labor, and minimal wages being commonplace for many. Socially, this era was defined by a rigid class structure. The upper classes enjoyed significant wealth and privilege, while the working class, which had migrated in large numbers from rural areas to cities in search of employment, faced harsh living conditions in crowded and often unsanitary urban environments. This disparity fueled social unrest and calls for reform, leading to movements like Chartism, which sought to improve political representation and workers' rights. Culturally, there was a fascination with progress and innovation. The Great Exhibition of 1851, held in London, celebrated the technological achievements of this era, showcasing inventions and industrial products from around the world. The mood of the time was one of optimism about the potential of technology and industry to improve lives, although this was tempered by anxieties about social change and the impacts of urbanization. Technologically, the 1840s were a time of significant advancements, particularly in transportation and communication. The development of the steam engine and the expansion of railroads revolutionized how people and goods moved, shrinking distances and making travel more accessible and efficient. This technological progress fueled economic growth and was a symbol of the era's broader themes of innovation and modernization. Major global and regional trends included the expansion of European colonial empires, the spread of industrialization beyond Britain, and the early stages of globalization facilitated by advances in transportation and communication. This was also a period of relative peace in Europe following the Napoleonic Wars, with the concert of Europe aiming to maintain the balance of power. The general mood of the time was a mix of optimism about the potential of technological and industrial progress, combined with a sense of uncertainty about the social and economic changes it brought. This was a period of both opportunity and risk, as new financial ventures and speculative investments became increasingly common, setting the stage for events like the Railway Mania. The Railway Mania of the 1840s was a period of frenzied investment and speculative bubble centered around the rapid expansion of the railway network in Britain. This phenomenon occurred between the mid-1830s and 1847, reaching its peak in 1846. It was characterized by a massive surge in the formation of railway companies, the issuing of railway shares, and public investment, driven by the belief that railways would revolutionize transport, boost economic growth, and generate substantial profits. The Railway Mania began as the potential of railway transportation became increasingly apparent following the success of early rail lines like the Stockton and Darlington Railway, 1825, and the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, 1830. These early successes demonstrated the profitability and efficiency of rail travel and freight transport, leading to a speculative rush as entrepreneurs and investors sought to capitalize on the burgeoning industry. The process typically began with the promotion of new railway companies, which would propose routes and seek authorization from Parliament. To secure investment, these companies issued shares, which were eagerly snapped up by the public, ranging from wealthy individuals to middle-class investors seeking to partake in the anticipated profits. The lure of quick and substantial returns drove a wave of speculation, and share prices soared as demand for railway stocks outstripped supply. Early railways demonstrated significant profit potential, sparking initial interest among investors. As new lines opened and demonstrated economic benefits, public confidence in railways grew. From the early 1840s, the number of proposed railway schemes exploded. Promoters often made ambitious claims about the profitability of new routes, leading to the establishment of hundreds of railway companies. Parliament was inundated with applications for new lines, many of which were speculative and not necessarily viable. As more companies formed, a speculative bubble inflated. Investors, driven by a mix of optimism, fear of missing out, and the pursuit of quick profits, bought railway shares at rapidly increasing prices. During the peak year of 1846, Parliament authorized nearly 9,500 miles of new railways, requiring an estimated $200 million in capital, an enormous sum at the time. By late 1846, cracks began to appear. The sheer number of proposed lines far exceeded the actual need and capacity for profitable operation. As costs soared, interest rates rose, and the financial viability of many projects came into question. Confidence waned. Share prices began to fall, and investors started to panic. By 1847, the bubble had burst, leading to widespread financial losses, bankruptcies, and a severe economic downturn. Investors were motivated by the promise of high returns. Railways were seen as the cutting-edge technology of the time, capable of transforming economies and societies by making travel and the transport of goods faster, cheaper, and more efficient. A broader culture of speculation had taken hold, fueled by the successes of earlier lines and the general economic optimism of the period. The fear of missing out on the next big opportunity drove many to invest without fully understanding the risks. At the time, financial markets were relatively unregulated, and there were few safeguards against overly speculative ventures. The ease with which companies could be formed and shares issued contributed to the rapid expansion of the bubble. Parliament's involvement in authorizing railway lines was intended to provide oversight, but in practice, the sheer volume of applications and the influence of powerful promoters led to many speculative and poorly planned routes being approved. Initially, public enthusiasm was high, with newspapers and financial publications frequently touting the success stories of early investors. However, as the bubble burst, many faced financial ruin, leading to a loss of public confidence in investments and a more cautious approach to future financial ventures. The collapse of the railway mania led to calls for greater oversight and regulation of financial markets. The financial losses also contributed to a broader economic depression in Britain, highlighting the dangers of unchecked speculative bubbles. There were many important figures involved in this financial history, but two of the most notable are George Hudson, known as the Railway King, and Robert Stephenson. George Hudson was born in 1800 in Howsham, Yorkshire, into a modest farming family. Initially apprenticed as a draper, Hudson inherited a significant sum from a wealthy uncle, which he astutely invested in the North Midland Railway. His early investments and successes quickly propelled him into the center of Britain's burgeoning railway industry. Known for his charisma, ambition, and ruthless business acumen, Hudson was a master of networking and persuasion, which allowed him to gain substantial influence in the railway sector. Hudson was driven by a combination of personal ambition, a desire for wealth, and a genuine belief in the transformative potential of railways. He quickly became a prominent figure, chairing multiple railway companies and aggressively pursuing mergers and acquisitions. Hudson's vision was to create an interconnected railway network across Britain, and he was instrumental in expanding lines and securing funding for new projects. His approach was marked by a willingness to take risks and use dubious accounting practices to inflate profits and attract investors. Hudson played a critical role in the mania by promoting numerous railway schemes and using his influence to sway public and parliamentary opinion. He was known for his grandiose promises of profitability, often exaggerating the potential returns on railway investments. His aggressive expansion strategy and his tendency to overextend his companies contributed significantly to the speculative bubble. While initially celebrated as a hero of the railway age, Hudson's actions ultimately led to financial instability when the bubble burst, and he was later disgraced due to financial scandals involving mismanagement and fraud. Robert Stephenson. Robert Stephenson, born in 1803, was the son of George Stephenson, the famous railway and locomotive engineer. Raised in the shadow of his father's achievements, Robert inherited not only his father's technical genius, but also a cautious and methodical approach to business. Educated as an engineer, he quickly established himself as a leading figure in railway engineering, combining technical expertise with sound business judgment. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Robert was known for his integrity, professionalism, and a more conservative approach to investment. While not driven by speculative ambition like Hudson, Robert Stephenson was motivated by a commitment to innovation and the practical development of the railway network. His focus was on creating sustainable and technically sound railways rather than merely exploiting the speculative market. His involvement in the mania was more tempered. He frequently warned against the overexpansion and excessive risk-taking that characterized the period. Despite this, his name and reputation were often used by promoters to lend credibility to less reliable ventures. Stephen's most significant contributions were his engineering feats and his efforts to maintain standards within the industry. He designed several key railway lines, including the London and Birmingham Railway, which set benchmarks for quality and safety. Although his cautious approach contrasted sharply with the reckless speculation of the time, his work provided the practical foundation upon which the more speculative elements of the mania were built. Stephenson's advocacy for sound engineering and his occasional public criticism of overambitious schemes helped to shape the dialogue around responsible railway expansion, even if it could not prevent the bubble from inflating. The immediate effects of the railway mania of the 1840s on contemporary society and the economy were profound and far-reaching. Economically, the bursting of the railway mania bubble in 1847 had a severe impact on Britain. Investors from various backgrounds, including small savers and wealthy speculators, faced massive financial losses as the value of the railway stocks plummeted. This collapse led to widespread bankruptcies and a credit crunch, triggering a broader economic downturn known as the Panic of 1847. This period of financial distress was marked by a sharp contraction in investment, a slowdown in industrial activity, and a rise in unemployment deeply affecting the nation's economy. The public reaction to this financial disaster was one of shock and disillusionment. The speculative frenzy had ensnared individuals from all walks of life, many of whom lacked a clear understanding of the risks they were taking. As the scale of the losses became apparent, there was a significant backlash against the perceived greed and recklessness that had fueled the mania. Public confidence in the financial markets was severely shaken, leading to a more cautious approach to investment in the years that followed. Politically, the railway mania's collapse underscored the need for better oversight and regulation of financial markets. In response, the government began to enforce stricter controls on the promotion and management of railway companies, including more rigorous scrutiny of proposed railway projects by Parliament. This period also marked the beginnings of a more regulated financial environment, laying the groundwork for future reforms aimed at protecting investors and maintaining market stability. Despite the immediate turmoil, the railway mania had significant long-term consequences and historical significance. One of the positive legacies was the accelerated development of Britain's railway infrastructure. Many of the lines proposed during the mania were eventually completed, creating a comprehensive rail network that revolutionized transportation and commerce. This new infrastructure facilitated economic growth by reducing the cost and time of moving goods and people across the country, contributing significantly to Britain's industrial expansion in the latter half of the 19th century. The railway mania also served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of speculative bubbles and the importance of due diligence in investment. It highlighted the risk of unchecked speculation and the necessity for greater transparency and accountability in financial dealings. The lessons learned from this period influenced future financial practices, promoting a more cautious and regulated approach to investment than sought to balance innovation with risk management. Furthermore, the railway mania contributed to the broader understanding of market psychology and the dynamics of financial bubbles. It demonstrated how optimism, herd behavior, and the fear of missing out can drive asset prices to unsustainable levels, leading to dramatic collapses. This understanding has been used in subsequent analysis of financial crises, helping economists, policymakers, and investors better recognize and respond to the warning signs of market excess. The legacy and lasting influences of the railway mania on financial practices and policies are notable. The aftermath of the bubble contributed to the development of a more structured regulatory framework for financial markets. The need for investor protection and market stability became increasingly recognized, paving the way for more sophisticated financial oversight mechanisms in the decades that followed. Culturally, the railway mania left a lasting impression on British society, symbolizing both the promise and peril of modern capitalism. It underscored the transformative power of new technologies and industries, while also illustrating the potential for financial speculation to lead to widespread economic disruption. The event entered the public consciousness as a reminder of the cyclical nature of markets and the enduring need for financial prudence. The physical legacy of the railway mania is still evident in Britain's railway network, much of which was laid down during or shortly after the mania. The expansion of the railways not only reshaped the economic landscape, but also had profound social and cultural impacts, enabling greater mobility and connectivity among the population. The outcomes of the railway mania were a mix of positive and negative. On the positive side, the rapid development of the railway network and the long-term economic benefits from improved transportation infrastructure were significant. Additionally, valuable lessons were learned in financial prudence and market regulation. On the negative side, the immediate economic hardship, financial losses for investors, bankruptcies, and a loss of public confidence in financial markets were severe consequences. The event also contributed to economic instability and social unrest during the late 1840s. The expected impacts of the railway mania included the profitable expansion of the railway network and substantial returns for investors. While some of these goals were achieved in the long term, they came at the cost of significant short-term economic pain. Unintended consequences included the financial collapse, economic downturn, and the subsequent regulatory changes. Moreover, the mania served as an unintended educational experience, providing a powerful example of the risks associated with speculative investment and highlighting the importance of sound financial regulation.